Thank you, Mr. Rotunda. Mr. Sekulow, welcome.
Chairman Goodlatte, Ranking Member Conyers, distinguished members of the committee, on behalf of the American Center for Law and Justice and over 75,000 of our members, thank you for allowing me to appear before you today. Determining presidential authority is a task which must be engaged in with only one question. Does the president's actions meet constitutional scrutiny? In this case, they do not. It is humbling for this grandson of a Russian immigrant to be before this committee today. My father is in the audience. His father, my grandfather, came to the United States in 1914. In 1929, he applied for citizenship and filed a petition for naturalization. My daughter-in-law found this online. 2 years later, a United States District Court judge in Brooklyn, New York, granted Sam Sekulow his status. She found that order as well. I believe in immigration. I'm the grandson of that Russian immigrant. I get to argue cases before the Supreme Court of the United States and appear before this committee. It's a humbling thing. Immigration law was complex for my grandfather in 1931, and it is still complex today. The Constitution, however, is not. Our system of government is straightforward. Congress writes the law, the President executes the law, the judiciary interprets the law. This is the separation of powers mandated by our Constitution. The President does not make the law. Now, with due respect, some of the statements that have been made, the President has stated that he changed the law. And I don't believe there's anyone on this committee that believes the President has the authority to change the law. He was being heckled at an event, similar to what we experience today. There's passion on the side of the issues. I understand. I think we all understand that. I joined Professor Rotunda, and I believe in significant and complete immigration reform. I believe in a pathway to citizenship. But I believe to do that through the legal process set forth in the Constitution. And the President doesn't get to change the law. He actually said that, though, that he changed the law. That was how he handled the question that was asked. He changed the law. Presidents cannot change the law. He can't do so constitutionally. He cannot do so under Supreme Court precedent. He can't change the law to comport with his preferred public policy, much of which I share. The President's executive action really disrupts the delicate balance of separation of powers that is the hallmark of our constitutional framework. Justice Frankfurter stated that regarding immigration and immigration issues, talking about being the exclusive power of Congress, that the formulation of these policies is entrusted exclusively to Congress. Now, 5 and 5 does not equal 15, no matter how many times you say it. And when 5 and 5 then equals 10, which is correct, that past constitutional wrong is not what made that correct. So this reliance that we've seen on some that President Reagan and President Bush and even President Eisenhower made or issued executive action or executive orders, which in some cases may be clearly distinguishable because they didn't set forth a new class, but even if they were not distinguishable, past constitutional acts do not get better with time. They are still just that, unconstitutional actions. President Obama also misplaces his reliance on the authority generally granted to the Secretary of Homeland Security. It's very different to utilize your resources to determine the status of your prosecutorial mandates and how you're going to use your limited resources. The condition of entry, though, of classes of aliens and having that denied or granted and creating a class, a new class, is not what the President has the authority to do. As sympathetic as it might be to the plight of people involved, he simply doesn't have that constitutional authority. And I think that with all the emotion we've even seen today, you have to put that aside. The question it comes back to the same question. Does the President have the authority? And by the way, if you look at the OLC memo and compare it to what the President said the deal was, quoting the President's word of what the deal is, I'd ask my colleague from the Immigration Law Center if she would recommend her clients accept the deal. Because the deal the President talked about did not talk about unfettered discretion with the agency that could be terminated at any time with case-by-case determination. That's not the deal the President talked about. That's not the deal the President put in place. And I would not recommend my client to accept the deal that the President has actually offered, which is very different than the deal outlined in the OLC memorandum. I would ask that to my colleague because standardless, absolute discretionary review by government agencies has been something I've been dealing with for 30 years at the Supreme Court of the United States. And it just generally does not go very well for the agency. OLC said it was required, though, for the President's actions to be deemed constitutional. As I said, I would not recommend my client to take the deal. In conclusion, in our view, President Obama's actions are unconstitutional. President Obama's actions are unlawful. President Obama's actions violate the separation of powers. And in conclusion, even with sympathy to the cause of immigration reform, impatient presidents may not violate the Constitution if they don't get their way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.